Our first presenter is Gretchen Polkinghorn. Gretchen is a certified wild mushroom forager with a deep-rooted passion for wild mushrooms and forest stewardship. Gretchen can carefully identify and harvest wild plants and mushrooms with respect for both biodiversity and future growth. When either teaching workshops or identifying rare finds, Gretchen champions a foraging practice that is as ethical as it is enchanting. I am really happy to have Gretchen here. She has been at our Northeast events, and she's a very good friend of mine, and we are doing fiber and natural plant dyeing together. So I'm really, really happy she's here and is going to tell us all about foraging in Minnesota. Take it away, Gretchen.
Thank you. I'm going to start by attempting to share my slides. So give me a second to make sure I get this right. Okay. Am I sharing? Is it the whole thing again?
I can't see the slides. There they go.
Yes.
There? Slides?
Now,
Okay.
now it looks good.
Okay, great. Allison already introduced me, so this is me. I've been a forager probably 10 years that I've been actively specifically foraging. I've been identifying things in the forest my whole life. My dad raised us in such a way that we were in the woods and we were finding the plants and figuring out what to do with them. In the last couple of years, got certified as a wild mushroom harvester. And so about 5 years ago, we bought our homestead in the middle of the forest and tried to figure out what we were doing. So I've been learning as I go and have really refined my skills in the past maybe 5 years or so. So I'm happy to be here presenting with you today. Just a super quick outline. We're going to talk a little bit about what foraging is. We're going to talk about sustainable foraging and what that means. We'll talk a little bit about tools. We'll go through and talk about some different mushrooms, plants, and other useful plants that you can find in the forest. A lot of this will be focused on specifically the forests area that we have here in sort of central Minnesota, but a lot of the plants that I'll talk about are widely available throughout Minnesota, throughout the Midwest, and some are even all over the country. So hopefully there'll be some information. I do want to preface by saying this is a very short overview about foraging, and so I don't recommend taking the information I give you right now and going out and thinking you can positively identify everything that's out there right away. And actually, I think my next slide is about that. Whoops, did I skip a slide? I skipped a slide. I think I need to go back. This one. These are my rules of foraging to make sure that you stay safe out there. My first rule, I always say, don't eat that. And the reason I say that is unless you can 100% identify the plant or mushroom without asking any other resource, you shouldn't eat it. If you're having to send me a text message with a picture and say, hey, is this whatever? Can I eat it? I'm going to tell you, no, you can't eat it, even if I'm 100% sure from your picture, like if I would eat it. But if you need to know how to identify things on your own, and the best way to do that is get out there with someone who's experienced who can help you. Be really careful of the internet and apps. Apps will identify things. It'll identify the same exact plant as 3 different things, the same app. So be really mindful of that. Any wild mushrooms you harvest must be cooked before eating. Wild mushrooms cannot be eaten raw like the ones you get at the grocery store. I just need to say that up front because people try to eat raw mushrooms for some reason, and most of them will make you sick. And then just be mindful of AI when you're looking for resources to help you learn. There are a lot of books on particularly mushroom identification, but any kind of foraging out there that you can buy them on Amazon, and it says it's written by an author. But as you do a deep dive into who that author really is, you find out they're not really a real person and they're AI, and there are mistakes in those books. There's mistakes, and foraging is relatively safe in Minnesota. There's not a lot out there that can um, that can seriously harm you, but there is stuff out there that can seriously harm you, even kill you. So just be really aware of that as you're going out. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to say be smart about what you do. Um, okay. So, foraging, what is foraging? So, foraging is basically going out in your space and finding stuff you need. It's particularly lately referring to like going out in the woods, going out in the fields, and finding the vegetation that grows naturally without human involvement, just what is out there and what can be used. Um, Mostly for food and medicine kinds of things, but there's also, as Allison said, we do dyeing, and you can do weaving, and there's fiber and all those kinds of things out there. So, and some of the benefits that I've found that are really helpful with foraging is it connects us back to the natural environment. It helps you get out into the world that exists without humans and connect us to the earth that we live in. Um, Foraging can promote the natural biodiversity that exists. If we're going out and using the plants that are out there, it helps create an appreciation for and more of that biodiversity. So we're not getting so many just single plant spaces. And people who know what they're doing when they're foraging, they're really encouraging those sustainable practices. They're being thoughtful about taking what they need, taking only the parts of the plant that they need, and leaving enough there to grow for the other creatures and humans and other people and the other plants in the forest that might need those things that are there. These are some basic questions that are important to know the answers to before you identify and harvest foraging plants. It's really tempting to get out there and to be really excited. Like, I'm so excited to go find these plants. And you go and you find them, and then you go and you gather them all up and you pull them all out by the roots and you take them home and you don't really know what you're going to do with them. You find out, oh, I didn't really need all of that. I just needed the leaves, or I just needed whatever, parts of it, or I should have waited 3 months and it'll actually be ready for me. So make sure you know what you're going to do with it. Make sure you know what your plants are, knowing the difference between the different things that are out there, because there are some plants that are very minor differences between something that's delicious and something that might make you sick. Knowing your ecosystem is important because it helps again, telling those lookalikes apart. Some things, don't grow there. Those kinds of pieces with it. Knowing the seasons. Every year, somebody posts in the mushroom page in August, I found a morel in my yard. Morels don't grow in August. That is a stinkhorn. Don't eat it. It smells terrible. Morels only grow in the spring. So knowing your seasons and what things will grow in those seasons is really important. And that's connected with the climate, knowing how your climate is changing, knowing how your environment is changing due to climate change. One thing I've noticed around here is we've got a lot of birch trees going down that all of a sudden there used to be nothing but birch trees, and now all of a sudden, after I don't know what's going on, I don't know enough about climate changing. It's a thing I've noticed. So knowing your climate, and that makes me a little hesitant to gather every bit of chaga that I see on birch trees, because I don't want to mess with the tree itself. When they already have other things that the chaga is going to kill it eventually anyway, but I don't want to be one more piece messing with that. And then also knowing your community. Are there other people in your community who might need these things more than you do? And knowing who else might be harvesting those kinds of either plants or medicinals or those kinds of things can be important as well. Okay, so when you go out foraging, there are important tools that you need to bring with you. It is possible to just go out in the woods with nothing but the clothes on your back and go out and find some stuff and bring it home, but it is helpful if you're going to go out on a big day to have a few tools with you, and they don't have to be anything fancy. The first thing I've listed is a knife, and I literally tend to take this little Amazon steak knife with me. I don't have anything fancy. I tend to lose things, and so I don't take my fancy mushroom knife out with me all the time. Sometimes I do, and frankly, I lose things, and I couldn't find it when I was preparing for things. Um, a hunter, they call this a hunter's brush or a mushroom brush. You're going to want to brush the dirt off. It's good practice to clean things in the field, so you want to brush things off out there. I always bring glass jars, just basic jars like this when I go. I'll put them in my basket. I got a big old basket that I take with me, and I'll put all my good stuff in there. It's a good idea to bring a bottle of water and a whistle because even the best foragers get lost in the woods. It has happened to me. So, had to call for my husband and he came and found me. But also bringing your ID books, your compass, GPS, any of those kinds of things. Bug spray is really important here in Minnesota right now. Bug and tick repellent. Um, I'm really try to be as natural as I possibly can, except when it comes to bug spray. I go in for the full DEET if I'm going out in the big woods because mosquitoes are relentless. So, um, all right. All right, let's get into a couple things. These are kind of the same things that we just talked about, knowing your plants and your ecosystem, but let's talk a little bit about some mushroom foraging things that um, I talk about mushrooms in basically four different categories. There's the delicious and easy mushrooms. Those are things like morels. Chanterelles I should maybe put into the delicious and tricky column because it does have a pretty dangerous look-alike. But morels, maitake, chicken of the woods, they're really easy to identify. They don't have any dangerous lookalikes, and they're pretty readily available here. There's the delicious and tricky ones. That's going to be things like boletes and corals and bluets, those kinds of mushrooms. They're harder to, they may have more lookalikes, those kinds of things. Toxic mushrooms, you're going to be sick, possibly with some permanent damage. Violet tooth is one that people often think is turkey tail for some reason, but it'll make you sick, but it won't kill you. And then there's the terrifying ones. Those are the ones that can cause permanent damage or even death, such as destroying angels is a pretty common one here in Minnesota that people think is like a meadow mushroom or something like that, especially in its early stage. Jack-o'-lanterns are confused with chanterelles quite a bit. They can make you really sick. So those are kind of the categories of mushrooms. These are common mushrooms that we have here in Minnesota that are easy to identify. They're readily available. I'm not going to get into identifying all these specific mushrooms right now, but we've got lots of these that grow around us and they're very common. Chanterelles should be popping up in the next couple weeks. Usually they're around 4th of July. And hedgehogs are not too long after that. Morels are over for the year. Puffballs will probably start puffing now that we're getting all this rain. The lobster, black trumpets might be out. I haven't seen them in my woods yet, but they have such a short window that they're available. So, okay. Then I'm not going to go through that again. We're going to skip to plant foraging. So there's lots of plants that are super available, things that you might even consider weeds in your garden, particularly purslane and lamb's quarters. Those are very, very, very common weeds in people's gardens, and they're delicious. So those are, and those are really common. There's also the wild chamomile. Some people call it pineapple weed that grows in your driveways, those kinds of things. It's just chamomile tea, basically. Labrador tea is really common if you've got swamps. Fireweed, that's a ditch flower that it looks like purple. People confuse it with purple loosestrife all the time, but it's a different thing. Ramps are hugely popular. This is when you have to be careful with foraging. They take 7 years minimum to mature, and if you go and pull them all up, they will not come back next year. They recommend less than 10% if there's a field of them, you take less than 10% of what's there in order to keep that patch growing over the years. That's one. They do transplant though. I did harvest some ramps last year and I planted them in my forest this year and they popped up. Or I planted them last year and they popped up. Not very many. I'm going to have to let them. I won't be able to harvest for probably 5 to 7 years at least. But they will transplant into a similar space. And then lots of different berries grow around here. One of my favorites that I discovered, I'd never heard of them before, but I have them all over in my forest, is service berries or June berries. There's actually a Red Bull that's flavored as June berry right now, which I thought was super weird. You can buy June berries in the grocery store in Canada. I'd never even heard of them before, but they're very becoming popular. They're very much like a blueberry. Blueberries, obviously, we've got lots of those. Choke cherries, grapes, raspberries, high bush cranberry, gooseberries. Lots of berries that you can forage. And I know we're going to be talking more about maintaining and doing agroforestry, but one of the things I've been working on in my forest is I've got a blueberry patch that I'm concerned is not getting enough. It's under pine trees, but it's got that second story of like service berries and choke cherries and those kind of smaller trees, and we're going to have to clear some of those out so that the blueberries can get more sun through the pines there. All right, I'm trying to be mindful of time, so I know I'm going really fast, but some of the other useful plants for foraging, these are used a lot medicinally and they're very easy to find. Plantain should be in my opinion, is like the number one easiest, most identifiable, and most useful. Again, it grows in your driveway, it grows in ditches, it grows in places where nothing else grows. And those leaves, you get stung by a bee or even a mosquito bite, you can take that leaf, crush it up, chew it up, make a paste out of it, put it right on that bite. It'll draw that toxin out um, and relieve that pain from that. I have a whole patch of my forest that when we moved here, they had mowed it. We quit mowing. It's kind of just between the trees and where we do mow because of mosquitoes. And it's all turning into plantain and jewelweed and yarrow right now, the whole patch. And that's just going to be what's going to grow there. Jewelweed is another really useful, um, soothing skin um, relief plant. Yarrow, super, you can do almost anything with yarrow, tinctures, teas, dry it, ointments, salves, anything like that. Mullein is another really useful one that's popping up in a lot of ditches. And that's another one you want to be mindful of you can use the whole plant, but being thoughtful about where you're harvesting from. You don't necessarily want to harvest it right off the side of a freeway because it's got all the salt and the pollution and the guck from the traffic on the road. So and again, it's one that you can make tinctures, ointments, salves. Um, People over centuries have used it to relieve congestion and coughing. You can drink a tea, you can steam it, you can actually smoke it directly to relieve congestion and asthma. Um, it's really kind of it's counterintuitive, but I have asthma and I've used it for my minor when I'm having a flare, and it is super helpful. Okay. Some things. So that was my kind of quick overview of easily identifiable plants. And just be mindful of where you're going. And
Gretchen,
yep,
I think we're
I'm
probably
good.
going to have to move on.
Perfect.
Is there
Nope, we
one
should.
more thing you want to push? You want to push out quick? The uh, f- legalities or
Yep.
safety or anything?
Yep, that was the last thing I was going to talk about
Great.
just real quick is make sure you're harvesting from your own property. Don't don't go onto neighbors' property, those kinds of things. State and county land know the laws of what you can harvest from those spaces. And remember, just because you don't find something the first time you go out doesn't mean it won't be there 3 days later. So you have to go out often. And I'm gonna wrap up and I am sorry that I took so long.
There's
That's
just
no
so much to
problem.
talk about. Yeah. So
Yep.
thank you, Gretchen. And
Yep.
folks, if you noticed in the chat, Gretchen's presentation is public, so you can click on her Canva link, and that should work out. So I'm going to hand it over to Maddie.
Great. So let me find special videos. Okay. So, I am going to introduce Sesha today. So, Sesha joined the Appalachian Sustainable Development in March of 2022. She leads the agroforestry training for technical service providers, ATF and RP, it's a mouthful, but
Worst
I like giving
acronym
that.
ever.
Yeah. Initiative with a focus on increasing technical assistance capacity in Central Appalachia with partners across the USA. Outside of ASD, Sesha is a forest farmer, a forager, the vice chair for the Association for Temperate Agroforestry, co-owner of Alania's Garden, instructor from Mushroom Mountain, and homeschooling mother of two. Just a couple activities. She has 25 years of experience in foraging and 10 years of experience in forest farming. So we are thrilled to have her here to share of her experiences, and I'll pass it to you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And please forgive me if I talk a little fast. I talk fast when I'm nervous, but I also have a lot I want to share with you quickly. Oops, wrong screen. Just a what to expect over the next little bit, next 15 minutes or so. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the 5 agroforestry practices that USDA recognizes here in the United States. We're briefly going to talk about what the differences between foraging and forest farming, because they do kind of bridge together a little bit, but they are very different. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to forest farming, which is going to include the diversity that can be involved within forest farming, the best practices that are typically utilized with forest farming, some of the challenges and opportunities that are existing right now, and then hopefully I'll have enough time to get to some support and funding options for you. So agroforestry, what is agroforestry? You may or may not be familiar with this. Agroforestry is essentially an integrated approach or farming with trees, but we're integrating not just trees and or shrubs, but agricultural products or horticultural products and possibly even livestock with this. And there's a host of benefits to adopting these type of agroforestry practices. So there are 5 currently in the United States that are approved under the USDA, and each one of these codes that you see relates to NRCS within the USDA as far as their funding opportunities, and each state is a little bit different with that. So here we have alley cropping, which is essentially rows of trees and or shrubs with agricultural or horticultural products utilizing the land in between. You have forest farming, what I'm going to talk about today. Riparian forest buffers are essentially strips of vegetation along any type of waterway that have a host of environmental benefits to it in particular, but also potentially economic as well. Silvopasture, which is essentially integrating livestock, trees and forage together, and then windbreaks, which have a whole host of benefits to them outside of just breaking wind. But all of those are topics for another day. Today we are going to talk about forest farming. So what is forest farming? Forest farming is essentially the cultivation of high value specialty crops, which are typically called non-timber forest products. You'll hear NTFP is the acronym that is very commonly utilized when we're talking about forest farming. So you are intentionally modifying or maintaining proper climatic conditions underneath the shade of a canopy to be able to grow X, Y, and Z species. So some of the differences between forest farming and foraging, and this is my husband and my daughter right here with a bunch of pawpaws that are both forest farmed and foraged. So this is where we're meeting here. I don't know if y'all have pawpaws in Minnesota, but I have like a ton of them on my property here in North Carolina. But with forest farming, it's going to be intentional. Anything agroforestry related is going to be the 4 I's: intentional, integrated, intensive, and interactive. And this is directly relating to how the systems are either being maintained, interacting with each other, or you are interacting with them.
Foraging, on the other hand, is very low impact. Typically, you're going to try to be leaving no trace, depending upon how you go about foraging. But typically, you want to make it as low impact as possible on the environment. It's going to be wild and unmanaged. So this is essentially an unmanaged area. And then it's lacking those 4 I's of the agroforestry with the intentional, integrated, intensive, and interactive. But can you do both? Absolutely. And can they complement each other? They're naturally best friends, in my opinion. I started out I started out foraging and then moved into forest farming as my relationship with the woods began to develop. So here's another example. This is my daughter over the years. On the left here, she's gathering chanterelles. Not far from that, she is harvesting ramp leaves that are intentionally cultivated. They actually have been eradicated in my area, as has a lot of other special and culturally significant species that we are reintroducing that once were native here. But even though they once were native, it doesn't mean we are wild harvesting. We are reintroducing and we are farming them, even if it's a low impact form of farming. So some of the functions that happen with forest farming, and this is directly related in how if you were working on a cost share, say EQIP or something with NRCS, these are some of the things that they would be looking at outside of income. So improving the soil health, there's potential for that, capturing carbon and storing that in the soil. It increases wildlife habitat and biodiversity. It can increase the income diversity for the farmer. Like we all have, well, not all of us, but a lot of us have at least a little piece of, forested land on our farmland that we don't really know what to do with besides maybe get firewood. So there's income diversity there. And then, of course, especially with culturally significant plants, there is that cultural preservation that is happening there as well. So when it comes to forest farming, there's this spectrum when it comes to how intensive it can be and how low in maximum input you're going to have to put into it. So forest farming is one of the few, it might actually is the only agroforestry practice that's kind of broken down like this and very unique in what it is. And hopefully I'm not freezing as I'm talking. I can't tell. But on the least intensive side is going to be just a step beyond foraging, but it's not foraging. It's wild stewarding. And that's where you're going to be taking natural wild populations and doing reseeding, controlling the invasives, those types of things. Then there's wild simulated. And I'm going to talk about each of these in depth a little bit more. And that's where you're reintroducing into ideal habitats and leaving it to nature do its own thing and very minimum input from us. And then you have a full-on woods cultivation, and that's like straight up farming, cultivating underneath the canopy. So I'm going to start out with the woods cultivate and work backwards. So this is going to be our most intensively managed. They're typically going to be some people don't monocrop them, but a lot of the like hardcore. I am a ginseng producer. I am a this producer or that producer. Like it's typically going to be a monocrop system, complementary to what you're going to be seeing in agricultural field cropping type situations. They're still going to be under the trees, but they're going to be more a lot more input, a lot more management, soil amendments, time, all of the inputs going in. But you do have a faster yield with this, but there is potentially a lower value, especially with certain root crops and some high value ones. When it comes to wild simulated, that's what we do primarily here on my farm, Eliana's Garden. And most of the forest farmers that I work with or that I am friends with, wild simulated seems to be the best way for time management and input, especially if you're working another job or doing all the things. So you would find an area that may already have these species naturally occurring. You may find indicator species that show that it is a good climate and habitat, potentially for whatever species you are wanting to grow. And you're going in and loosely managing and introducing a new species and maintaining it. But honestly, like with my wild simulated patches, I go check on them maybe 2 to 4 times a year if like I'm intentionally going out with that, but I pass by them on a more regular basis just because I like walking through the woods. But it's something that you can, put in the ground and leave. This method is going to be one of the lower impacts and give you more mimic what the wild formation of that ultimate in non-timber product is going to end up looking like, as if it was growing in the wild. And that this has become especially when it comes to like ginseng dealers and stuff like that, it's a little bit difficult for them to determine if it's wild or if it is actually cultivated, because they can look so similar. And because they look so similar, there can be a higher value associated with them. And there are ways that you can go about getting your crops verified that they are not wild, that they are cultivated, which falls into different regulations within your state. And then you have your wild stewarded. So these are wild populations that you were maintaining and caring for. And a lot of us foragers, we do this anyway. So that's kind of a little bit of a bridge that is happening there. We find these places that we really love to go back to year after year. And if I find an invasive species going into my chanterelle patch, I'm going to, go out there and probably try to eradicate that, because I don't want it dominating what I am hopefully going out there to harvest later on that I cannot cultivate. So in this is going to be the highest value. It's going to be the least amount of input from you and least amount of environmental impact as well. So that's another one to take into consideration. When it comes to, and forgive me, I see stuff coming in, comments coming in, but I can't read them quite yet. But when it comes to forest farming, it is so diverse. It is so diverse. The diversity of products are really difficult to cover. The product opportunities, the different types of landscapes that you can create different things in. Our forests are so varied from region to region. And even just here on my little, I have 57 acres here, and I've got pine forests, I've got deciduous forests, I've got predominantly oak forests, I've got a variety of things. And so there's a variety of different options. They don't always necessarily flip well with each other depending upon that situation. And anytime you're working with trees, which all agroforestry ones you got some long-term commitments going on there. So it is one to consider planting for the future. And it really is planting for the future. So when it comes to diversity of products and opportunities, you've got medicinals. Medicinals are one type of, here in Central Appalachia, people think, oh yeah, forest farming, I'm going to grow me some ginseng, but they don't think about all the other stuff when it comes to the medicinals that are available. The wild yam, black cohosh, blue cohosh, slippery elm, witch hazel, golden seal. These are just a few of them. This is an image of golden seal, by the way. So you have the medicinal realm that you can plug into and enjoy. You also have edibles, but edibles are not just limited to mushrooms or ramps. You've also got your sugaring. If you tap maple or birch or sycamore or anything like that, any type of sugaring or any type of nuts, those are edibles. Those are non-timber forest products you are producing, but can also be foraged. So here we're combining, we're like kind of bridging that a little bit. Are you intentionally managing it? Then you are forest farming. You also have the craft and floral area that a lot of people totally disregard and don't give any credence to. With that come, in the coastal regions that I work with, longleaf pine is a deal. Everybody's doing the pine for their mulching. You also have specialty wood products. When you're manipulating the shade, even though it is a wood product, it doesn't mean it's a timber product. And there is a distinction there. So as you're thinning and managing the canopy, you can take those remnants and turn that into, beautiful wood for turning or for basket making. My husband does split oak baskets. Pussy willow stems are another in the floral industry. There's a lot of different areas here. This is just examples. And one that is of incredible importance right now that I do not feel like is being spoken enough about is nursery opportunities. So the agroforestry community has grown in interest and demand so rapidly that the nursery industry has not been able to keep up with it. So there is a beautiful opportunity here to be able to set up micro nurseries underneath the canopy for quick turnaround. If you'd like to learn more about that, feel free to pop me an email. I'm glad to talk more about that, but that can be seeds, transplants, rhizomes, and onward. Okay, onward with the diversity in landscape. The thing called over yielding, and that's where you are taking your land equivalency ratio and what you can actually produce on a land. When you are going up and stacking multiple layers of production, you are really utilizing that land for everything that is available. So within a forest system, we have our canopy. You could be producing nuts, fruits, and bark. In the middle story, it could be nuts, fruits, berries, bark, foliage, and craft supplies. And in the understory, you could have vines for weaving or basketry. You could have foliage, berries, and of course, nursery production. And then fun, we got underground too. So we really got multiple layers of production that could be happening here that is super low impact in a natural, very low maintenance ecosystem. And then we do have this weird little bridge with timber and specialty wood that I kind of briefly touched on. So I do want to say that just managing timber, just doing Christmas trees, just forestry is not agroforestry. Okay, there is a distinct difference there. They do mesh a little bit, but they're different. So managing timber while managing those crops under the understory turns it into more of a management system that falls under agroforestry. But again, that specialty wood where you're manipulating the canopy or having it like what Gretchen was talking about a little bit ago of needing to clear out some light for her blueberries. So there's some opportunities with that material that is having to be taken away to utilize that as well. And that goes into the timber stand improvement. So talking about site best practices when it comes to forest farming, and I could talk for a solid hour when it comes to best practices, but I'm just going to give you a high level overview here. So the best practices when it comes to site assessment, again, I mean, just knowing your species, knowing your land, what do you want to grow, what is it capable of growing, all kind of falls into the site assessment deal. The best times to do that site assessment is going to be not in the dead of the winter when you cannot see any of the foliage and existing plants. Spring through autumn are going to be your best times to identify what is existing. And that can potentially, if you know your plants, that can tell you a lot about the soil conditions that are supporting those plants. The plant identification is really important as well. The forest condition. Is it in a climax situation, or is it in more of a new shrub transition, opportunistic forest and development? The slope and aspect have a lot to do with what everything from the prevailing winds to how the sun hits it, and therefore it's going to have different warming timing and leaves dropping and all of that kind of stuff. The shade percentage is hugely dependent upon the species needs, which directly relates to the canopy cover. But what species are consisting of that canopy cover can help tell you a lot as well. For instance, if you have tulip poplar, you can automatically know that that canopy leaves, when they drop, it's going to be adding calcium to the soil, because as those leaves decompose, they are adding high amounts of calcium that are available to the soil, so are available to the plant. So that might be a good place for calcium loving species. Soil types, of course, existing infrastructure. When you get into any type of farming operation, you want to think about access, water, existing buildings, potential machinery used, all of those types of things that are already in place or need to be put in place. Pest threats. Deer and turkey and voles. Voles, dear God, they are some of my worst enemies right now. Yeah, still working on that. Anyway, but evidence of pests. And then flag species or areas of interest. So you can go back and do a planning. Now, when you're foraging, don't go flagging stuff. Okay, seriously, don't leave a bunch of mess in the woods. But if you're planning for a development of a forest farming operation, that's completely appropriate. Do remove your trash when you're done, though. When you're considering your site plan after you've done your site assessment, make sure your species are going to be regionally appropriate. What's growing up there may not be appropriate for me, and vice versa. I really want to grow mangoes and avocados, but they're not appropriate for me. The management needs, a lot of that goes back into your infrastructure. And then you really need to decide if it's going to be woods cultivated or wild simulated or stewarded, and that's going to help decide what that site plan is going to look like as well. When you go to implementing your project, this is my little boy here, a long time ago, back when he would actually go in the woods and do stuff with me. We were working on mushroom totems here. But going into site preparation, whether or not you need to make soil amendments and those types of things, controlling invasives is an increasingly important issue that we're all facing across the country right now with various species. How you source your plant material, and that's another thing going back to the nurseries. Sourcing plant material locally, you're less likely to be sharing disease. Make sure that you have appropriate for your region. And that you're not going to be transplanting things that don't need to be transplanted, and plant for success. And then, of course, how you're going to go about protecting those plants from, be it human threats or wildlife threats. The site preparation is going to differ depending upon if you're doing woods cultivated or wild stewarded. Woods cultivated may mean that you are planting something where it is not necessarily its ideal location. So you might need to do some soil amendments and bed preparation and whatnot. Wild stewarded, hopefully you're picking out a good spot and you can roam with it. Back to plant sourcing. I keep going back to this. Y'all please just like go in your woods and start growing stuff, okay? Propagating from existing populations. This is like the easiest and cheapest way to get started with your own little woodland nursery. If you can find and identify certain species, learn how to propagate off of that. They're going to drop seeds. They're going to be able to do root divisions. There's really wonderful opportunity and a cheap way to get started and to start exploring that world. But some considerations, again, going back to, is it appropriate for the site? Is it regionally appropriate? And yada, yada, yada. Y'all can see this. Y'all can see the rest of that.
Stacia, this is fantastic. How much is left of your presentation? Because you've been trucking right through this and I don't want to stop it, but.
Am I at my 3 minutes?
Yeah, well, yeah, you hit your 3-minute mark.
I hit my 3 minutes. Okay, yeah, I'll tell you what. Hey, these are things I'll share my slideshow with you. But these are things that you should think about with implementing. These are things you should think about with managing. Ongoing observation. Some of the challenges: slow growing, small roots, take a long time. Prices fluctuate. But this is something I do want to show you as far as opportunities before I sign off of here, okay? So when it comes to wild harvesting and foraging versus being able to show that something is actually forest farmed, huge price difference if you are looking to sell things. And I would like to, one to bring your attention to here is with the black cohosh, for instance. This is last year's statistics here, $3.50 per pound dried price for the root. If you look over here on the right side, black cohosh root, $45 to $60 per pound for dry root. Huge difference. So if you're actually wanting to stay in the woods, enjoy it, make a little bit of money, forest farming is the way to go. Multiple different channels, direct sales, retail, and then mainstream retail. Lots of support that is available to you, be it my organization or others regionally. There should be a bunch of links that could be dropped for that. And if y'all want to go to our website or scan that QR code, there's some grants that are available and accepting applications right now that would apply to your region in your area. So the end. Oh, check out the agroforester things coming up this fall. In the end, did I make it in my 3 minutes?
Oh, you did a spectacular job, Stacia. I'm sorry that we should have had a full hour of this as well as Gretchen, because we've had an incredible turnout, 73 women, and it's just a blessing. Before I hand this over to Allison and Noreen and Maddie, I just wanted to share real quickly this slide so that I can show you what our next webinar will be, beneficial birds and conservation. I just want to interject that because people start dropping off and I don't want to lose them. But I'm going to hand this right back to you right now. Thank you so much. Allison.
Oh, wow. This was great. We really need to plan another one on these topics for sure. We're only just scratching the surface on not just agroforestry, but forest farming. Our NRCS contacts and the Savannah Institute, who we already have a kind of a relationship with, have admitted that they don't do a lot of forest farming yet. But there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of interest, and these are things that we really need to learn more about, and it's so exciting. I love my woods, and anytime I get to spend more time there, it's wonderful. So we're going to go through some questions. Both of our speakers have agreed to be on until at least 1:15. So as participants, if you're able to stay on as well, we are got a lot of questions in the chat, and we're going to try to get through as many as we can. But I just encourage you to watch for future topics on stuff like this. So, Noreen, do you have some questions ready?
Yes, we do. The first one is if you can dry the wild chamomile just like regular chamomile and use it for teas.
Yep. The wild chamomile, it dries really easily. And it stores really well. You just have to make sure that you fully dry any plants that you want to dry. Make sure they're really dry before you try to store them, because if you store them like in a sealed jar or something, it can get moldy. But make sure that you really dry it. And it's just like loose leaf chamomile tea that you buy at the store. It tastes, in my opinion, better. But yeah, dry it, drink it up. It's delicious.
There was also concern about some of the EQIP funding, wondering with some of the losing some of our NRCS staff. And maybe Allison can comment about the federal program that it's, even though the office is cut, maybe they can, an alternative for them.
There's a lot of opportunities for assistance with your forest and your woods in Minnesota. I don't know specifically about specific forest farming practices that might be encouraged or funded outside of NRCS, but the DNR has sustainable, now I've forgotten the acronym because there's just too many that live in my head, Sustainable Forest Initiative Act. There's a lot of information through Extension. There's a website called My Minnesota Woods. There's the Minnesota Women's Woodland Network, who we have had some connection with and have gotten a lot of great suggestions and connections with. Just so much stuff out there for your woods that we should, we're working on continuing, these woodland topics. EQIP is not on hold in Minnesota. I was awarded an EQIP grant and made it through, and we got funded. I think maybe the priorities will shift. That is what happens with all these types of programs. If you have had some cuts at your local NRCS office or your local SFA office, these are federal programs and there's access to them. They just might not be in your county anymore. So let's contact one of us and we will do whatever we can to make sure you get connected. Is that helpful?
Yes. And Gretchen, we have the question for you on, thank you very much, Allison, by the way, too. That was great. Gretchen, how do we find out? I mean, can we forage in state parks? Is that a state thing? Or how do I find out if I'm doing things legally or not?
So the general rule in state parks is you can forage for your personal use and you cannot go off the trails. So if you can reach it with your feet still on the trail, you can forage it as long as you're taking just what you're going to use for yourself. You can't sell anything that you forage off of, and that's in state parks. State land does allow foraging. It's all available. If you just look up foraging rules in Minnesota, the DNR has a breakdown of that. And it varies county by county. Federal forests, like national forests, you can forage, but national wildlife preserves you cannot. So there's some differentiation with those kinds of things. But the best thing to do is to look up the Minnesota DNR site, to look up what the rules are for that. Generally, forage on your own property as much as you can. Find friends who have property. Those kinds of things is kind of your best bet. Anything you forage off of not your own property, though, it generally should be for your own personal use, not for sale in other spaces.
Now, I did look up too, to sell like to a restaurant, you have to be certified in that. Otherwise, the fines are $50,000 for the restaurant and $50,000 in Minnesota to the person that violated. So just even chefs should be certified. So.
Yep, that's certifications through the Minnesota Mycological Society, and they hold classes twice a year generally on that, and that certification goes through them and is registered with the state of Minnesota. So if you look me up, I'm registered as, and that's for mushrooms specifically. I don't think there's a lot of regulation around other wild plants.
Okay. And Stacia, we have some more questions for you too about, I know you had your hand raised, so, but also where do you find native trees? Where did you find some that, let's say even we're a little bit far from you in Minnesota, but where would you go?
Well, real quick, I just want to comment real quick on the certification that is a national law, and that there are currently only a handful of organizations across the United States that certify. So I know there's a lot of people that are not just Minnesota that are in this group. The organization, so I work as my side hustle is an instructor to certify people for that wild mushroom in Mushroom Mountain. So we cover a 9-state basis now, more on the East Coast, but we're starting to move a little bit west. Minnesota has their own, Alabama has their own. So really check with your state, and it's typically going through the Department of Agriculture, who will be approving those. So just wanting to throw that in there, that does kind of vary state by state, but it's federal. When it comes to native species, it really depends on what you're looking for and what size you're looking for. So like I said, the nursery industry, when it comes to agroforestry, has really encountered kind of a bottleneck. Your state forestry service typically has a nursery service available. And if they have enough demands for a particular type, then that is a really good, affordable way for you to get it as well. However, there are more and more regional nursery collectives that are starting up across the United States, and many of which are communicating with each other. I'm glad to, I don't have that information pulled up right now, but I'm glad to share some of those initiatives, which is, a grassroots, let's get nuts and trees to people, so more nuts as in seeds to people to continue to expand and make these species available across the regions. So it really depends. If you're talking about in Minnesota, I would reach out to the Savannah Institute, and they probably would be the best one to guide you for that region. Here in the Southeast, I'd be glad to guide to some others, but shipping in from Oregon to North Carolina may not be the best idea because they're not going to be adapted to this region.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, and we've also have a comment here too, but the Soil and Water Conservation District usually has trees for sale about January. And let's say, gosh, I wanted some elderberry, and Alex had tons. So I could also buy from her Soil and Conservation as too. So she's about a couple of hours from me, but it's so worth it. I mean, at $1.50 a tree, it's wonderful. So kind of check with them. Most of them are online in Minnesota anyway. And, even though you're not a Minnesota resident, you can buy, North Dakota people can sneak over the border. We're okay with it. So those are kind of some great tips. Also on trees, you had some fencing and some tubes. What is a must for getting that kind of the rabbits and everything from chewing right down to your trees?
So there's a few different options for tree protection depending upon what your predator is. And there's a few different organizations that offer the tubes, the tree tubes, and we commonly more see those in conversions when somebody's taken an open land and putting trees or woody shrubs in. And that could range, and those are typically called tree tubes or tree cages or shelters. But if you're talking about Plantra is a great organization, by the way. You can make them yourselves, but I discourage people from using stuff like PVC pipe or anything like that. Make sure it's going to have good aeration through it, allow the plant to be able to move back and forth and strengthen its stem or eventual trunk. But also it can create a greenhouse type effect in it, and like a lollipop for deers with all this fresh new leaves coming up. But you can make homemade vole guards and those types of things. You can also get those from organizations such as Plantra. That's just the one that I typically hear farmers talk the most about and have utilized myself. But when you're talking about species on the ground, you can always take shrubs if they can tolerate higher levels of shade. We've all got fallen branches and stuff and brush in our woods. Just put a little bit on top of it, and that can help deter turkey and deer and stuff from being able to get to it. There's cheap and there's expensive ways of protecting your trees. So
there was also with NRCS also had that they would kick in for tubes. I just got that funding for a pollinator habitat and some trees. So actually with your equip applications through the NRCS, you can get tubing paid for. They have beautiful plastic tubes that you can ask about. One thing we wanted to comment too is and maybe Gretchen and Stacia, you can do this a little bit too on the Farm Service Agency, because for you to get the key for equip, you really had to register your farm. Can you comment on that, please?
do you have a registered farm?
Pardon? I'm sorry, you
Oh,
cut
so
out.
I think that was directed towards both of us. Who should start? So here on my property, it was most of my land. Ooh, I just found a tick in my hair.
Oh, wow.
So what I've been doing. You can with the Farm Service Agency, getting a farm ID number, you would want to go down to your local FSA office, tell them what you're wanting to do. Chances are there might already be one associated with it. When I went to deal with our property here, there was already a farm ID number associated to it. All we did was transfer ownership on it to ours, and then we ended up adding other parcels to it. I will also say that a farm ID number does not go by the normal, or farm parcels do not always go by the normal boundary lines of your property as you think of them. They go by what is going to be considered to be farmable. So have good conversations with them. Make sure that you understand exactly what part of your property is being identified as what, and when you are applying for cost share programs through NRCS or other agencies, you cannot do the same practice on the same parcel. So keep that in mind.
Okay. Gretchen, do you have your farm registered?
Nope, my farm is not yet registered. It's just, we're just new to actually doing anything with it. So we're just starting to kind of figure out what we're doing. So I have the shell egg. I sell eggs from my chicken, so I have that registration, but I don't have a full farm certification registration yet.
Okay, thank you. Also, too, with foraging, Gretchen, with mushrooms, that seems to be a really big hot button. And you talked about if you don't know for sure. And is there also, because Minnesota is different than where Stacia is in the West Coast. I mean, we have a lot of people that come to the West Coast and assume those mushrooms are the same as Minnesota. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like if I go visit, I'm going to go to Stacia's farm, I think, or out West. Can you tell me a little bit about the terrain of mushrooms that might be okay for here, but maybe not in another region?
I would say generally, I was actually just talking about this yesterday, that I was out in North Carolina and I was really excited to be finding all kinds of mushrooms, but I was also really hesitant about harvesting what I thought things were, because I know things are different in different places. They might look just like what I harvest here at my house, but if they don't, it might be a completely different mushroom. So it's really important to know your environment, know your region, and be specific about what you're doing. Um, and so I would just be cautious. Make sure that you really know your mushrooms and know your area. And just because you're harvesting, you know, an oyster mushroom here in Minnesota might not be exactly the same as an oyster mushroom in other places. Like right now, golden oysters are kind of taken over in southeast Minnesota and they're expanding out, but you still have to be cautious about knowing what those are and how they're changing. So I would generally say know your area where you're going to be foraging. And if you're going someplace else, don't assume that the same rules and descriptions and conditions apply to those
Great
spaces.
advice from Gretchen. Don't eat that poking horn. We give her a hard time about don't eat that. We need to take a photo. We keep forgetting to take these photos, and so if you're willing, turn your camera on, and I think Maddie's going to snap the photo. Make sure that as many folks are in this gallery as possible. Thank you so much for coming and participating. And it's obvious we need a lot more education about both of these subjects, because this is fun and it's important. So if everyone's ready,
I was going to say, if you're ready, you can say your favorite thing to forage to yourself or to whomever, and I'll count you down. 3, 2, 1. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. We still have 5 minutes. Is it okay if we keep taking a couple more questions? We're just trying to get those housekeeping things done that it's hard when there's so much enthusiasm.
I happened to see a question in the chat about birch sap, and I don't know if that person is still on here, but
Yeah, go ahead.
yes, you can make syrup out of birch sap when you harvest the birch water out of the trees. It's very different than the process of making maple syrup. I've made it a couple times. It is great. It's just different. It's not like maple syrup. Generally, you don't want to boil it, and you just reduce it slowly, and it takes about 120 gallons of birch sap to make 1 gallon of birch syrup. So you need a lot of it, but it's good. Even just the birch sap itself, though, is also awesome. I've harvested just the birch water and I put it in the fridge and use it to make coffee and just drink it. It's really good.
I was getting ready to say we have only gotten to simmer down to syrup level just a few times because my kids love that water, that sap coming out of them. They're just like getting it out of the tree, you know. It's so good.
How big should the tree be before you tap it?
I mean, I think the general rule is at least 8 inches diameter, but I don't harvest. I try to, as I was saying earlier, the birch trees in this area are starting to look kind of sad. So I haven't for the last year or so. And when I did, it was just quite a bit like the real big ones. I don't know how big that is, but big, the big birch trees. But I think the minimum is about 8-inch diameter.
So should I just put sycamore? Is there any other trees that you would tap that, other than the maple and things like that? Are there some other suggestions you ladies have?
I have a book suggestion that will go into that. And I can't remember. I think it's called Sugar in Your Woods or something. I've got it on my shelf in there, but I'm not going to step away to go find it. I should have been prepared for that. Sorry. But there's some really good sugaring books out there that go into a variety of species.
How about walnut syrups? Amanda had just asked. No? Anyone?
I have heard of people doing it. I have not had much success myself.
Okay, no one seems to have experience with it, but it might be interesting. I wonder if it's like the black walnut, itself, where it stains so terribly.
Oh, another resource when it comes to sugaring, if you're interested, a Future Generation University has I think it's a free program that they have out specifically on sugaring, and they're based out of Southeast West Virginia. Lots of directions there, Southeast West Virginia, but they have an amazing program specifically geared sugaring, and they're a wonderful resource. They're very wonderful people. Highly recommend checking them out.
You can, sorry.
Nope, go ahead, Gretchen.
It's not tapping, but you can make, it's called muglio, which is a syrup made from pine cones. And you basically take the really green young pine cones and you put them in a jar and you cover them with sugar and you let them sit for a long, long, long time, and it turns into a syrup that they use. Alan Burko does a lot of stuff with that in his Forager Chef stuff.
Okay, and box elder syrup, anyone have any experience on that? I, would like to chime in if someone has box elder tree experience. Okay, I have though. It tastes like marshmallows. It's very light, and it's too putsy to make a syrup, so just make the tea with it. And a trick that Native people did was that you let it freeze outside, and then the water comes off, and just throw away that, or you can use it too. But it works really great, especially for a tea, a very light tea, box elder. And just make sure that you always treat that wound on the tree, though, because we did get some insect pressure because we didn't do it right. So now we will. Oh, yep. Christine said spruce tips can be eaten, simple syrup with sugar after steaming them in hot water. It's also very vitamin C. So the Native people used that for, they didn't have scurvy because of taking that spruce tips. It's amazing with mango. It's good. Okay. Anyone else have experience with that? No? Okay. Wow, violet leaves, Stacia, you have with super high in vitamin C too. Didn't know you can do that. So are you making a tea with that, or what are you doing?
Oh, I wilt it down in a cast iron pan, because cast iron, the iron actually will help make it more available to your body. Whereas if you add calcium or milk or anything to it, it'll help reduce the consumption. So I just do like a simple saute. I'll toss in my lamb's quarters and some spinach and whatever else is available green wise, and throw in some wild violet leaves. And yeah, they're incredibly dense in vitamins.
Well, maybe we should be wrapping up. It's 1:17 on my computer now, and we could talk about this stuff all day. So maybe we should wrap up, and we will plan maybe another topic close to this one, so we can keep learning. That's all we have. I think we can say goodbye. Watch for our newsletters for a wrap up on this, and sharing the slides, and the recording too will be posted on our website.
Thank you, Allison, helping us land on a sweet note to say goodbye.
Yeah, for syrup. Yeah.
Thank
Bye,
you, Stacia.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thanks for having us.
You. So great.